Okay, so in this lab, we're going to start taking a look at if and else branches. Um, in this one, I'm going to use just ifs and that might seem a little redundant, but as I go along, I'm going to start adding in more and more concepts. So just ifs, and in these if statements, we're also going to be using Boolean expressions, which is a true or false expressions. So for instance, if x is equal to y, then if x is equal to y is a true statement, then it will proceed to execute the instructions inside that if statement. Else, if x is not equal to y, then that will be seen as false, and it will not execute those instructions. Okay, so specifically for this lab, we are trying to remove gray from red, blue, and green, from RBG. So here's a summary. Given integer values for red, green, and blue, subtract the gray from each value. Okay, so computers represent color by combining the subcolors red, green, and blue, RBG. Each subcolor's values can range from 0 to 255. Thus, 255, 0, 0 is bright red, 130, 0, 130 is medium purple, all zeros is black, all 255s is white, and 40, 40, 40 is dark gray. So any value, when they're all equal to each other, you get gray, and we're trying to remove gray. So 130, 50, 130 is faded purple due to the 50, 50, 50 gray part. So in other words, equal amounts of red, green, blue yield gray. So how would we remove gray from 130, 50, 130? We would subtract the 50, 50, 50. So take for instance, if we had 120, 10, 120, the way we remove gray is to subtract the least value from all three values. So we would get rid of gray. This would be 110, 0, 110. That's how you get rid of gray. Let's say that we had 50, 50, 75. I would subtract the least value from all three, so I'd be subtracting 50 from all three. So it'd be 0, 0, 25, and I would be subtracting gray. So that's our goal. Okay. So you see that I have import java.util for our scanner, so we'll be taking user input for whatever RBG is. So the first thing I'm going to do is create variables for red, blue, and green. These are going to be whole numbers, not floating points, so I'll use type int, and we'll have red, blue, and green. And these need user input, so red equals in.next int. So there we go. Now we have input for red, blue, and green. I like to, before we ask for the user input, to prompt them for the input. So I'll just say, what are the values for red, blue, and green? That'll prompt the user. Okay, and then we get values for red, blue, and green. Once we get red, blue, and green, now we need to start our if statements. So first one is if, and we can have 7 different variations for what our answer is going to be, what the outcome is going to be. For instance, if red is the least out of the three values, then we would be subtracting red from all three values, or if blue is the least, or if green is the least. So that's three different outcomes. And then we have three more different outcomes if two of the values are equal to each other and they are the least, like in our scenario where we had 50, 50, and then 75, we would be subtracting the least value from all three if two are equal to each other. And then so that's three more different outcomes. And then we have our last outcome where all three values are equal to each other, where we would be subtracting all three, would be gray from all three, which would give us 0, 0, 0. So the first scenario is if red is the least. So if, and I'm going to do a double parentheses to show if red is less than blue and red is less than green. So I use double AND right here for this Boolean statement so that both of these have to be true. So red is less than blue and red is less than green. So if one of these is false, then this if statement will not execute. It'll see that this is false, this is true, so therefore all of this is false. That's what the AND is. So if I want to do either one of these is true to run, then I would do double pipeline. So only one of these statements. So let's say that red is 25, blue is 50, green is 10. Right? So red is less than blue, but red is not less than green. So red is less than blue would be true, red is less than green would be false, but overall this statement, this expression right here would be true because one of these is true. So either this is true or this is true. So the double pipeline is known as the OR comparison. And double AND is the AND comparison where both of these have to be true or for the full expression to be true. So we're using AND. So red is less than blue and red is less than green. Then we'll execute this if statement. And now I want to subtract red from all three values. I'm going to do that with my output system out print output line, and I want to do my first one where it's going to be red minus red, subtract red from red. I'm going to append a space in between. Next, I'm going to do blue minus red. Another space. And lastly, green minus red. Okay. And then I close the body of my if statement. So notice that my if statement contained the Boolean expression and then a brace right here to open up the body of the if statement. Now you only need brace if there's going to be multiple lines inside of your if statement. If there's only one line here inside the if, then you don't need brace, it'll only execute that one line. So I could take away the brace and an if statement will see this as being the only content inside of the body. If I had another line where I wanted to output some other statement other than just this one, without the braces, the if statement would only print this first line right here, and it would not execute this one. And now the overall method in main may print that, but not as a part of this if statement. So this would print whether this was true or not, because this is not part of the if statement. To make it a part of the if statement, you would contain it inside of the body of if with these curly braces. So in this instance, we don't need it. I'm going to put it just so it's clear to us what's inside of this if statement. If red is less than blue and red is less than green. Alright, next. That takes care of if red is the least value. Next we'll do if blue is the least. So if blue is less than red and blue is less than green, then we're going to do red minus blue blue minus blue and green minus blue. So blue becomes the value that we're subtracting from every other value. Okay, close the body. So that's two different outcomes. Now for the third, if green is the least, so we do green is less than red and green is less than blue. Green is going to become the value that we subtract from RBG. Red minus green. Blue minus green. And green minus green. Okay. Now for the next three if statements, our Boolean expression is going to contain whether two of the values are equal to each other and are less than one greater value. So if red and blue are equal to each other and they are both less than green, then we're going to subtract either red or blue from all three values. So if red is equal to blue and either red or blue, so I'll just use red is less than green. So now we'll have two of the three that are least and are both less than the maximum. Now I don't want to have one is less than two values and those two values are equal to each other, because that would fall into one of these statements. Like if red is less than blue and blue is equal to green, then this would follow this expression here. So I'll use red is equal to blue, and when we're doing Boolean, when we're trying to test whether two values are equal to each other or something is equal to one another, we use these double equal signs for integer values, double equal signs, or I'll say numerical values. So red is equal to blue and red is less than green. Then what I want to do is subtract. I can subtract red from every value still. So I'll do red minus red, space in between. Blue minus red is the same thing as blue minus blue. And green minus red. Okay. Now let's do if red is equal to green and red is less than blue. So blue becomes the maximum. Then we're going to subtract red again from everything. And that'll be the same thing as subtracting green from everything. So we do red minus red. And just to express why this is becoming so redundant, because we're not utilizing better methods. We could use loops or arrays or any other things to help us achieve this goal, but since this is our introduction to using if statements, we're just going to focus on using ifs. So red minus red, blue minus red, and green minus red, which is the same thing as green minus green in this case. Or switch statements also will go over switches. Okay, so that's if red is equal to blue or if red is equal to green. Last thing to do is if blue is equal to green. I think I forgot a parentheses here. So if blue is equal to green, and let's say if blue is less than red, so now red becomes the maximum. Then if red is the maximum and either blue or green is the least, we'll subtract blue from all values. So red minus blue. Blue minus blue, and green minus blue, which is the same thing as subtracting green. Okay, so that takes care of the three values where two of them are equal to each other and they're both less than the max. Now is the case where all three values are equal to each other. So if blue is equal to, or actually if red is equal to blue and red is equal to green, which would make them all equal to each other, and it should print out all zeros, but we have to kind of prove that by doing red minus red. Basically the same output as a lot of these, but different case, right? Blue minus red, and green minus red. Close the body, and I believe that should take care of this scenario. So let's test this. What did I name this? RBG? Yeah. Okay, let's compile it, make sure I don't have any bugs. Alright, should prompt me. What are the values for red, blue, green? So I want to test this to see if red is the least, then we want to subtract red. So let's say red is 10 and then blue is 20, green is 30, then our output should be 0, 10, 20. Perfect. So first case works. I'm going to run this 7 times to test all 7 scenarios. So that took the first if statement. And the problem with this program, which is why it's inefficient without else statements, is because even though it took the first if statement, the program is going to check every other if statement to check if they meet the condition. If otherwise we use else statements, which is what I'm going to do in another video, it wouldn't have to check every other else if statement. Once it meets the first if statement, then that will be the only if statement that the program checks. Okay, so we want to see if blue is the least now, so I'll do 20 for red, 10 for blue, 30 for green, and that should give us 10, 0, 20. Okay. Last one is if green is the least, so I will do 20 for red, 30 for blue, 10 for green. That'll give us 10, 20, 0. Checking the first of the 3 that were 2 are equal to each other, so I'll do 10 for red, 10 for blue, 20 for green. That'll give us 0, 0, 10. Next one is if red is equal to green, so let's do 10, 20, 10, should be 0, 10, 0. And the last one is if blue is equal to green, so 20, 10, 10 should be 10, 0, 0. And then the last condition is if all 3 are equal to each other, so let's just do 50, 50, 50. That should give us 0, 0, 0. Perfect. And that's how we solve this lab, where we are trying to remove gray from RBG using if statements and Boolean.